Next up, we will have a presentation delivered by Mike Zagorczyk, the Chief Operating Officer at SoundHound AI. The presentation will be focused on how we can go from concept to reality, how voice and generative AI will transform the in-car experience. Please welcome him to the stage.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Before we start, I just wanted to thank Reuters Events for hosting this fantastic event and bringing us together. Thank you so much. And also to my colleagues at SoundHound, and also to all of our industry colleagues here. It's so important that we get together and share learnings. There's so much disruption happening in the industry. Only by coming together do we actually elevate what we do in an important way. So I'm grateful to be able to talk about that. Speaking of which, we have our topic today. Three key components: generative AI. You can't really read a headline or talk to somebody without the topic coming up. The voice interaction on top of generative AI, and how does that impact the in-vehicle experience? These three things are coming together in a highly compelling way. We're going to talk about that today. Specifically, two main objectives. We're going to explore what we're calling voice generative AI. That's the combination of generative AI and voice, and its ability to transform two parts of the entire vehicle experience. There's the driver part and the OEM, and that will be a theme throughout the presentation for the next 20 minutes, where we'll talk about the benefits to both. This is a win-win scenario that we're really excited to be continuing exploring, and backed by, on the second point, some proprietary research that we just completed. Now, we've seen the impact of generative AI in vehicles. We're live in production, but we wanted that objective survey results, and we'll share some of that. So 3 topics. Where are we today with voice and generative AI and the driver's experience? How do we create something better for them? And what is the value to OEMs? What is the win-win scenario? So we'll conclude with that. But first, a quick slide on SoundHound AI. We've been in the business for about 20 years with a very simple and focused mission: voice enable the world with conversational intelligence. We believe that you should be able to talk to your products and services the way you do other people. The technology is progressing. We're there. We're also very proud of our partnerships, many of which are automotive. In fact, our first entry into the market of voice was with automotive for over a decade. So we have our deep partnerships and integrations that we have there. We're grateful for that. But also, we're not limited to automotive. We voice-enable services in the food ordering space, so you can call a restaurant. Our AI will take that call. You can place an order. We're in drive-thrus. Smart TVs, financial industry, healthcare. And it's really important, we believe, to be cross-industry, because the voice interface is truly transcendent. It impacts every part of the business. However, our core and our beginning was in automotive, and a lot of people like to say, or at least I like to say, there's 2 types of companies. There's ones who work in automotive and ones that don't. It's tremendously complex. The bar is high. People trust the brands. So for us to be able to be a part of that is really transformative, and that's why we're excited to be here today. And of course, I'm Mike Zagorczyk, Chief Operating Officer, and happy to share these topics with you. So let's start. Where are we today with the voice driver experience? Well, I'll start with some obvious stuff, right? Hands on the wheel, eyes on the road. We want distracted-free driving, and there are more and more influences. This is fairly standard fare, but always important to establish. So voice interaction, it plays a critical role in the driver experience. It is another way to interact. It is inherently less distracting and more focusing than other forms of interaction. And it's pretty much here. The stat isn't on here, but well over 70% of drivers have access to some form of voice interaction, whether it's the voice assistant that's part of the vehicle, right? The extension of the vehicle that exists, we're in market today, or whether it's a mobile device that they plug in. But the vast majority of drivers who have access to it, they use it, 92%, right? So we've established this baseline of what people can do, and they do use it. And also, the more they use it, the more satisfied. There are use cases. So of the total sample, 32% use it daily, and of course, they're the most satisfied with it. They found their use cases. It's here to stay. It's an extension of the driving experience, and the satisfaction is there. But it varies within OEM. So for the subset of people who have access to an OEM-based voice assistant, the good news is that it's all on the positive side of things, ranging from the high 80s into the high 50s. So these are an anonymized list of OEMs that were part of our sample of over 2,000 folks. And it varies, the satisfaction varies. It's all skewing positive, but we see some inconsistency there. And it's really some of that inconsistent experience combined with limited use cases that prevent people from doing more. So you get a lot more of the call mom, directions home, the simplifications. They try things, it doesn't work. I'm sure we've all had this experience. So you focus what you do on what does work. And of the percentage of people who don't use it, 32% of them, they don't even bother trying it because they're just not sure about the product. So there's an opportunity here. High usage, more potential. This is where the idea of generative AI comes in, and we've all used it. It's inherently conversational, right? It's a conversational interface to get that, and it makes it really prime for voice. And so on the bookend experience, you get better experiences and a broader set of use cases. So the idea of you saying to your voice assistant and saying, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get that, chances are you'll probably get an answer here, and I'll dive into a little bit more about that. But I think it's important to talk about how we got here, what brought us to this point, and how does voice really factor in. So we enter in this converging timelines. We thought this was sort of interesting. If you look at the platform side of it, in the late 90s, you had the dot-com boom, as it were. That was a big platform change. And then 10 years later, there was mobile. And the reason we're calling these out is because if you think about platform changes, it's usually defined by, did companies come into fruition that couldn't exist before because of the change, right? So you know that dot-com, a bunch of companies were born. And also, companies that didn't adopt the change fell behind and potentially were eliminated. They didn't migrate. Same with mobile. Think about how many companies you use and brands today that are exclusively mobile that did not exist before mobile came along. That is the platform shift. And by the way, the companies that didn't adapt to mobile fast enough suffered as a result. We believe that generative AI is that today. Companies that didn't exist will come into fruition. We're already seeing that with billions of dollars being poured into startups. And conversely, just as the other platform changes before, companies that don't adopt it risk being left behind. But what's even more interesting for the space that we're in, those are platform plays. We look at the voice timeline. You go back into the 90s, there was dictation, right? Some of us used Dragon, Dictate. You had a PC, you could talk into it. It didn't really understand what you were saying. It was just translating speech to text. It really wasn't until 25 years later you started to get this voice assistant, the natural language. So it didn't just translate what you're saying into text, it actually started to understand it using natural language understanding. That was very software dependent. And this is, by the way, where SoundHound came into the market with our proprietary software. But now the conversational nature of generative AI has converged with the voice experience. So you have generative AI voice, generative AI. The two are coming together to create this very critical moment that we should all be paying attention to. So how we make it work is we blend software engineering and machine learning. So it's important. You can't just put a voice interface on generative AI and take it into production. We all know about hallucinations. We know that you have a specific product experience you want to create. That's not a general one. So it's really about combining software and things that are proprietary with the large language models like a ChatGPT, but there are others, and then really managing and arbitrating them. So when you ask a question, who answers that question? You have to make sure that you get it right. So it's really building it into a system, not just plugging it in. But there's some good news. I mean, again, this is an objective study. We partnered with Big Village to conduct an independent study. How do people feel about it? Well, drivers are excited to use voice generative AI to make their car experience better. This was an overwhelmingly decisive result. People are aware of it, and we asked the question, if intelligence capabilities like ChatGPT were integrated, and you could ask any question, how likely would you to use it? Across the 4 markets we tested, it was 70 plus, even into the 80s. And more interestingly, for subset of drivers planning to purchase a car in the next 12 months, you're pushing well up into the 90s. That makes sense. People who buy new cars are expecting the latest and greatest technology. The nice thing, though, is with a software-defined vehicle, you could potentially even start offering this to existing drivers as well. But the new drivers are looking for it. So we get these 4 categories that emerge, right? Driver experience and a brand extension. The brand extension is powerful. As we move more and more into the cockpit, not just the driving experience, your brand personality is your voice assistant, and you can make it really specific. But the value creation is there, new ways to capture value, and a more financially sustainable future, new ways to monetize. Voice AI provides that. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the research findings in terms of the experience. Now we're shifting to the driver side of it. There were 3 main themes that emerged. There was First, the driving experience. So how does your voice interactive experience help the driving experience? The idea of being productive while you drive and entertained while you drive. Overwhelming, there was these 3 themes that kept coming up over and over. So there's these 9 specific use cases that emerged that we tested. I'll go through 3 of these. We don't have time to go through them all. So the green ones are the driving experience. Blue is productivity. The pink is entertainment. I'll give one example for each, just to show what's now possible today with the experience. So one example on the driving experience side, it's really a vehicle light comes on. And you can ask your assistant, well, is this serious? What light is it? And the assistant can answer in a very conversational way. Looks like an issue with the parking brake. You should be okay, but you may want to contact the dealer. And by the way, I can book a dealer appointment for you right away, right within the ecosystem. So you get the informational and the transactional part right here. And the user and the driver gets the information right away. High value, this one ranked very highly. In the second category, we have the productivity side. So this is a food ordering example. This is near and dear to our hearts because we provide this service, where you update your navigation to say, hey, find me a non-chain restaurant close to my route. And up comes the result. Of course, it's filtering for non-chain restaurants. It's not necessarily the closest one, but it's the closest non-chain one. And by the way, same as the previous example, if it's a restaurant that has voice AI ordering, like the one that we provide, it can say, hey, I can take your order now and the food can be ready when you're there. So more value. A fun entertainment type example, something like a personalized guided tour, right? So you're on a road trip, you can engage with the assistant in a way that provides information, passes the time. You don't need to be productive, but away you go. So, give us a guided tour, and you can kind of see some of the examples there. The possibilities are endless, and I'm sure if you've played with some of these large language models, you've seen that as well. So when we asked the users in the survey to stack rank these various use cases, an interesting pattern emerged. In hindsight, not unsurprising. The 3 driver-based experiences came first, right? So value-added navigation, vehicle management, something like an operations assistant, right? And this is logical, and this is the extension of the vehicle into the voice assistant. And by the way, this is, I think we would say, the #1 reason why the OEM vehicle assistant is absolutely critical. No mobile device that you plug into your car is ever going to provide this effectively. In order to make sure that the brand extension is there, the vehicle comes alive, the opportunity is there. And that's why, for the vast majority of OEMs are in the space and offering some sort of voice assistant. The question is, how are we collectively evolving that to add more of that value? On the productivity side, the staying in touch, getting more done, food ordering, this is where you get a little bit more of that competition with third-party devices because people's information is on their mobile phone and they can port that over. With a lot more of these integration of services and capabilities, OEMs can offer these services within the vehicle. They should do it because all the studies we've seen is that drivers want to have a deeper experience with their vehicle brands. In fact, this wasn't this study, but there have been countless studies about trust in OEM vehicle brands, and trust is incredibly high for vehicle brands. They trust brands with information, they trust with security. This is a key opportunity to evolve. And of course, the third is this idea of entertainment, content curation, guided tours, interactive games. People really do want to pass the time. And again, it can be highly integrated. And so if you remember your social studies class, social science classes, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's sort of a hierarchy of automotive voice assistant needs that emerges, right? The idea of, I need to get where I'm going safely. I need to make sure I'm connected to my vehicle. While I'm doing that, I want to be productive. And sure, when I can, I want to enjoy my time as much as possible. So there's a logical structure here, but this presents a framework of opportunity. So let's talk about the benefits to OEM. That was all driver value. And we really want to focus on the win-win scenario here, right? Capturing the value created by voice generative AI. Well, interestingly, in the sample that we have, the majority of drivers are willing to pay a subscription fee for this service, right? They're already paying it for other services. We're in a world where services are paid, streaming content. If you're offering something that is new, that is outside of what you're used to having, you accept that it's a paid service. I mean, we pay for Spotify, we pay for Netflix. This is content that you get, so you might as well pay for it. And the incredible value that generative AI provides has correlated pretty heavily for people's willingness to pay, right? And so the question was, would you be willing to pay a small monthly subscription fee for a bundle of services that included this? They said yes. And it goes up, again, for drivers who are planning to purchase in the next 12 months. Again, there's that theme of saying, well, I want the latest technology and I'm willing to pay for it. So this is really encouraging because, as we know, a lot of subscription services don't just include this, but this alone provides value. And then you take the subset of people, right, that 30% or so that said they weren't willing to pay. Half of those are willing to monetize in other ways, right? Hear ads, potentially give data, although the last session touched on that a little bit, or other ways. That doesn't mean you have to do these things, but it's an indicator that people are seeing value whether they pay for it or not. The added bonus here is that subscriptions aside, and of course that is where the industry is going, there are other ways to monetize through transactions. So we talked about food ordering. We know firsthand that restaurants are desperate for new customers and new leads. All kinds of food ordering services have either user-based transaction fees or restaurant-based ones. Every transaction that's made is a monetizable moment. Dinner reservations, service scheduling, tickets. The technology is there to do that. So you get not just subscription-based monetization, but user-based. And that's further supported by the finding on the right, which is the question was asked, assume you were considering two different car models that had similar features and prices, would you be more likely to buy the one that offered voice generative AI over wouldn't? And the numbers, again, skewed very positive, that they would choose one that had this over one that didn't. And that's a really important finding. People are asking for more technology and more capability in the vehicle, and voice is established. It's here, so it's really about upping the game. So let's talk about the roadmap. This is the last section. Where do we go from here? There's one statement in my short life that I've realized, this seemed like a good place to put it, is that technology creates possibilities, but it's products that solve problems. You can't buy technology, right? You can't just give people technology that's not ready. You have to productize it. Otherwise, you don't have something that you can go to market with, and especially in the automotive industry. The brand trust is there. It just has to work, right? So it's important that we think about it. And by the way, those user experiences we're talking about, the bundled services, that is that productization. It's not just turning on the technology as we know. So that's kind of my quote, but I added somebody who's far more quotable than I am, the late, great Steve Jobs. He'd been saying this for decades. You start with the customer experience and you work back to the technology, right? We know this. The challenge is, though, if the technology isn't good enough, you can back into a wall and you can't deliver the experience. The reason we're here talking is because the technology has caught up. We saw the timeline slide and how it came together. So ultimately, the technology is available, so what customer experience do we want to provide? How are we creating value? That's the conversation we can have. And there's a lot of talk about saying, well, if we provide this technology to everyone, where's the competitive advantage? It's very much about elevating the foundation that we're building on top of, right? Remember I talked before, is that you're either on the generative AI train or not, and there's a brand experience that you can create at the OEM level, at the model level, and even at the segment or profile level, right? So the ability to innovate on top of this is where you get your competitive advantage, dedicating resources and time to figuring this out. It's about having the tools, not about just adding a generic experience and calling it a day. It's highly strategic. And lastly, it takes all of us. The reason I kicked this off by saying it's great that we're coming together to share, because it's only through that sharing do we elevate our understanding of what we can provide, especially with competition coming from other sources, big tech players coming to take over your cockpit. It's really this collaboration, if you will, and it's figuring out alliances and integrations, right? What services do you provide that's already happening, whether it's music streaming, navigation, other forms of content. And also choosing development partners that can help you do it. In fact, one of the slides we didn't include here is we asked in the survey, it said if you're if you knew that your car brand was partnering with a technology company to provide a voice AI service, would you be okay with that? And the vast majority said yes, because they understand that certain companies are great at certain things, others are not. They're already used to seeing other brands in there. I'm not saying that it has to be a branded thing, but there's that awareness and understanding. So the partnership angle is key. So really the message here is the moment is now to take advantage of it. We should all be practicing and doing it. We're really proud that we're live with all of our automotive partners with the generative AI integration solution. We've seen the engagement numbers go up. We're just getting started. Satisfaction has gone up. So we've already started to see this with our own experiences. We just want to make sure that everyone has the benefit of that as well. So with that, thanks very much. And I look forward to talking to all of you.